This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. And by our friends at B&H, who once again are presenting their Build Expo at the Javits Center in Manhattan this June 17th and 18th. Of course, it's all about the gear, from hands-on demos to expo-only deals and expert advice, but it's so much more. Speakers covering a wide array of subjects and techniques, portfolio reviews, photo walks, just a great opportunity to meet like-minded enthusiasts and professionals alike. Registration is free, so please do show B&H some love by signing up at the link down in the show notes below. Claudia and I will be there too, so please do find us to say hi. This is the second time in as many months, the third time in as many years, that I am being asked to wrap my head around a camera clearly aimed at a demographic of which I am not a part. Not that I take it personally, but it does feel like the industry is trying to break my brain. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I will cut to the chase. I've had Fujifilm's incredibly tiny, minimalist, $895, 240 gram with battery and SD card, 17.7 megapixel 1-inch sensor equipped, integrated fixed full-frame equivalent 32mm f2.8 equipped, optical-only tunnel-style viewfinder equipped, small integrated flash equipped, just announced, X-half, in hand now for less than 24 hours, and I just don't know. I don't know if it is an utterly brilliant, breakout camera destined to be a runaway success, an agglomeration, maybe amalgamation is a better word, more in sync with the zeitgeist than anything I've ever seen, or a bold calculus to thread the needle of commerce and emotion in search of an uncontested competitive space destined to fail, a victim of too many compromises. But Fujifilm has an incontrovertible success with its Instax line of instant cameras, so maybe the company does have a better pulse on the market than the rest of us, yours truly included. In fact, while I'm not sure yet how I feel about it, Claudia went from "it's a toy" to "fun, I dig it," after a mere 30 seconds with it and creating her first diptych. It's more than capturing the moment, that's what she said. It elevates you to being an art director or film director. You have to put more intention into it. She said that too. It makes you curious. It's exciting, she said. She even suggested that an evolution of the X-half could allow it to become a tool for creating real-time mood boards, even scene storyboards, with clients. I don't know about that, but what is a diptych? What exactly is the X-half? And how would Fujifilm get from here to there? Would the company want to be there? Glad you asked. Although I am highly constrained with what I can show you or tell you because the new X app that is essential to the experience was not available as of recording. Let's start at the conceptual level instead of the usual raft of specifications, because to do otherwise, beyond what I've already shared with you, is to immediately frame the camera, no pun intended, improperly. It just doesn't win on specs. You may have already noticed this, but that's because it isn't about specs. It's about a fundamentally different experience and a fundamentally different understanding of what is important to its target audience. Fujifilm calls the X-half a kind of digital half-frame camera, yet specifically calls out full-frame compact film cameras of the past, most especially the jewel-like Rollei 35 and Contax T2. But I think of the X-half as an antidote to, a rejection of, The complexity, size, weight, and expense of modern dedicated cameras, the banality of smartphones, and the inherent narcissism of selfies they encourage, yeah, maybe not so much, because vertical orientation is otherwise known as portrait. Anyway, and an antidote to and rejection of the orthodoxy that real photographers need to spend hours, weeks, even years editing the crap out of their images on dedicated computers with big screens using expensive, endlessly recurring annual subscription software. In other words, the X-half paired with the X-app, which, as I said moments ago, is essential to its purpose but not yet ready as of recording, and a portable INSTAX printer, if you'd like, is about fun, joy, curiosity, freedom from back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, carpal tunnel syndrome, oy vey, a different way of seeing, capturing, and a different way of manipulating images with far less work at the back end. It's about being alive in one's own skin rather than being flummoxed by or subservient to innumerable in-camera choices delivered via 1980s-era calculator-style UIs. Too many fiddly secondary controls touted to provide practically infinite choice when we don't need or want infinite choice. The most important choices have nothing to do with any of that, but instead things boiling down to time, place, headspace, and intention. Too many editing software choices with infinite layers, God knows how many kinds of magnetic lassos, plugins, curves, presets, the vast majority of which are irrelevant for 99% of us, 99% of the time. It is a camera that gets out of the way for as long as you want it to, and only then asks, but what if you could do this with it too? Sounds good to me. And ambitious as Hold that thought. Next, let's dig a little bit deeper into key specs rather than what it aspires to be. As I just said, your first reaction may not be entirely positive, but I will ask you, suspend as best you can your judgment. Hold, obviously, that thought. So, beyond the fact that the X-half weighs just 240 grams with battery and SD card, get this, it's 20% smaller, 32% lighter, and 47% less expensive than Sony's RX100 Mark VII. Wrap your head around that, because that is a small camera. I've already mentioned that the X-half uses a 1-inch sensor, the RX100 Mark VII does too, but that's pretty much the end of what they have in common. Fujifilm chose the nominally lower resolution 17.7 megapixel 1-inch sensor for the X-half, but then rotated it 90 degrees from horizontal to vertical with a 3:4 aspect ratio, an inexact nod to the 9:16 aspect ratio of social media apps on smartphones. This turns Oscar Barnack's innovation of a century ago on its head when he rotated 18x24mm Cinefilm stock 90 degrees from vertical to horizontal to create the 36x24mm 35mm film and today's digital full-frame standard of the 3:2 aspect ratio. But the name itself, X-half, is a nod to half-frame 35mm cameras of yore, and I suppose that means one ought to compare it to an actual 35mm half-frame film camera one can buy new, like the Pentax 17. We should hold that thought, but yeah, let's not. Because the Pentax 17 doesn't do a thing for me. It's far less ambitious. It's an industrial design kludge, in my book. A revanchism with which I have no patience, but what do you think? I'd like to hear about it. I'd like to read about it in the comment section below. As with Fujifilm's own 40 megapixel APS-C X106 and 102 megapixel medium format GFX100 RF, the X-half comes with an integrated and fixed wide normal lens, in this case a non-leaf shutter equipped 10.8mm f2.8 actual, the full frame equivalent, as I said, field of view of a 32mm with the same light gathering capability of any f2.8 lens, but with a full frame equivalent shallowest depth of field of an f8.4. Given its diminutive size and the absence of a leaf shutter, it may not surprise you to learn that it does not have a mechanical shutter either, relying instead solely upon an electronic shutter with a top speed of 1/2000th of a second. The smallest aperture on the camera is just f11. It has an ISO range from 200 to 12,800, but unless you're shooting video using the orthodox 1 over the frame rate for shutter speed, you ought to be okay in the brightest sunlight. Unlike both of those Fujifilm cameras and the RX100 Mark VII, however, the X-Half sports contrast detection only autofocus and houses, again, as I've already mentioned, a tunnel-style optical-only viewfinder, no EVF nor hybrid finder like the one found in the X Pro 3, never mind the fact that it lacks a diopter. Not great for me. The finder especially feels a bridge too far for my kind of minimalism and the precision I seek when composing a frame, but oh well. Let's move on to explore more of the camera's minimalist approach. On first blush, you'll only notice 6 physical controls, maybe just 2 or 3. An exposure compensation dial, a threaded shutter release located concentrically within that dial, an on-off switch you might well miss nestled in next to that dial, a tiny manual aperture ring, yay, a lever on that ring to make it easier to move it, reminding me of nothing so much as the infinity lock of my 1938 Leica Sumar 5cm f2, a manual focus ring which you definitely won't notice if you have the lens cap on, and again on first blush, a what the heck is that doing here film advance lever. Just as you'd find on a Leica M10D. Oh baby. Turn the camera around, however, and you'll see 2 more physical controls, a stills movie switch and a play button, and that's it, not a single function button to be found. But what you'll also see is a teensy-weensy, non-articulating vertical 920K dot rear touch screen for live view and for navigating an incredibly abbreviated, thankfully so, menu system. To the left of that, you'll spy an even teensier and weensier, non-articulating and much narrower vertical rear touchscreen. It is an homage to the film canister window found on many later film cameras, allowing photographers to know with certainty, rather than relying on memory or the good practice of tearing off the end of a cardboard film box and placing it into a holder on the back of the camera, to know what film you actually had in the camera. In this case, of course, what the X-Half shows in this sub-LCD is the film simulation one is using, and it serves double duty as an enter or back key used in conjunction with the larger screen. I love this simplicity and this aesthetic. Turn the camera another 90 degrees and you'll find one more switch you may have missed that you'd actually been looking for. The on-off switch for the tiny integrated flash. But if you think the signature features I've just shared with you are there only for show, you're wrong. This layout is the gateway to revealing just how much thought Fujifilm has put into X-Half to bring back the fun of the analog era without the drag. This is what makes it truly unique. Although a quick note before we go down that rabbit hole, if the advance lever reminds me of nothing so much as Leica's M10D, the concentric exposure compensation dial above it reminds me of nothing so much as the 1971 Leica M5, and the front of the X-Half reminds me of nothing so much as the 1953 Leica M3. In fact, with all of these nods to Leicas, I'd guess that if Fujifilm or anyone else were to place a red dot on the front of the top plate, just left of lens center, dollars to donuts, I don't remember where that comes from, most people would think they're looking at an authorized toy Leica M. And I am not dissing the camera when I say that. On first blush, I think I'm using that phrase too often now too, it would feel like one too. Light, a bit plastic, but still gorgeous and somehow feeling like a quality piece. But here's the thing. It is not just that this comes closer to the experience of, the essence of shooting with a film camera half a century ago. Maybe the most precise way to describe it is as a cross between a Leica M and a Kodak Instamatic, updated to 2025 with all of the mod cons from the vertical aspect ratio to the mere existence of autofocus. It's what happens afterward. I was going to say that the integration of both is utterly unique, But I suspect once again that much of this is a result of Instax DNA finding its way into the X-half and then being elevated by Fujifilm to a next level implementation and integration. I'm short on time, and there's so much to cover, but let me give you a taste of the workflow Fujifilm has developed to create a fundamentally new take on an old experience. And forgive me that there's basically no B-roll here, just not enough time. Anyway, 1. You use the advance lever to tell the camera after you've snapped a photo or shot a video clip that you want the next photo or video you capture to be displayed next to it side by side in camera. You'll see it that way when you hit playback along with the individual files separately. The result is a 2-panel image, a diptych, but you are limited to just 2-panel compositions, not 3. This is why you haven't heard the word triptych, and why Fujifilm calls this its 2-to-1 or 2-for-1 functionality. 2. As with all Fujifilm cameras, there are a number of film simulations on tap, displayed on the rear sub-LCD panel. But they are limited in this instance to just 13. Of course, one of these is Acros, my favorite. 3. The X-half also includes effects like grain, I like that, and novel, in my experience, filters like light leak and expired film. I was going to say I'm not sure how I feel about this, but actually, I don't really like this. As in my day, a light leak was a pain in the ass, which meant the camera needed to be sent in for repair. And no less an authority than Saul Leiter essentially shrugged his shoulders when responding to a question about his artistic intent using expired film. Saul explained that it was a matter of cost, not artistry. I love Saul Leiter for that. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch my video entitled, What Makes a Great Photograph? Musings Inspired by Saul Leiter. I'll try to remember to put a link down in the show notes below or somewhere up here above. 4. The X-half offers a film mode, which takes away live view on the rear screen so that you can only see your images once you've finished your roll. You can even print contact sheets, sprockets, film stock, and all. I'll be able to tell you much more about all of these things once the app is live and I can get a printer to go with it. Let's talk about how well Fuji has executed against this ambition. In my first 24 hours with the X-half, I'll tell you that the execution exceeds my expectations for it. 1. I was really pleased that the lens on the X-half is very, very good. Better at the focal length than the lens on Leica's 1-inch sensor Deluxe 8. In fact, I was surprised by how well it fared for what it is compared to, get this, the outstanding Leica DG Vario Summilux 10-25mm f1.8 I used on our Micro Four Thirds 26 megapixel GH6. Of course, the GH6 Summilux image was better, courtesy of more resolution and a higher performance lens, but I'd be happy to shoot with a lens this performant on this kind of camera all day long. 2. Its image quality exceeded that of a 1.5 megabyte HEIF file from my iPhone 14 Pro, but the 28 megapixel RAW DNG from the iPhone 14 Pro's nominally 48 megapixel main sensor, set to a 1.3x zoom or 1.3x crop in my attempt to match object size, did have more detail at stupid high magnification. 3. But you know what? Printed on a 17 by 22 sheet of Epson Ultra Premium Luster with no cropping and all of 30 seconds worth of editing, that X-half image looked pretty darn good. 4. The X-half size makes sense. Slip it into almost any pocket, no big deal. You can carry it all day, you don't feel it. 5, right. It's so light that it's the first camera. While some of us might assert it needs a grip, I feel comfortable asserting, as a camera grip designer with my partner Ed at Helium Design Lab, that no, it does not. It doesn't need a Peak Design anchor either. A little wrist lanyard is just fine. 6. I think the camera is made of plastic, but it feels good. It's very well assembled with very tight tolerances. If that was 6, then okay, 7. I really like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. 8. With its small size and fairly wide field of view, the lack of any kind of image stabilization doesn't matter much for stills. 9. I love that the shutter release is threaded. 10. The camera practically had me at film advance lever. On the other hand, 1. I really don't like the optical finder. It is more appropriate to a toy camera. 2. The absence of image stabilization and dedicated ports for an external mic and/or headphones makes it an unconvincing alternative to even a smartphone for video. 3. The absence of high-resolution video capture, high frame rates for slow motion, automated time lapses, or panoramic stitching makes it unconvincing as a good alternative to a smartphone for people who need those things. 4. I found the rear screens to be quite tiny, too reflective in bright sunlight, not bright enough to power through it. Smartphone users may have a problem with this too. 5. The absence of hybrid phase detection autofocus matters. I found that in low light or low contrast, the autofocus hunts more than I'd like. Again, smartphone users, dedicated camera users may have a problem with this. 6. The absence of a hot shoe limits the choices for dealing with low light situations. 7. The camera doesn't have the resolution or computational power available to a smartphone for enhanced image quality, again especially in low light, or more capable auto exposure, and, well, you know, smartphone users may have a problem with this. 8. The aperture ring and exposure compensation dials are stiff. Maybe that makes sense for pocket carry, maybe they'll loosen up a little bit with use, but it seems to me there is a better middle ground. 9. I think people consume video vertically on social media, but people live life seeing and scanning horizontally. I simply prefer Barnack's 3:2, 4K's 16:9, DCI 4K 17:9, CinemaScope's 2.4 or so to 1. You get the idea. Let's talk competition and I'll wrap it up. There is so much more I want to cover. The camera deserves much more coverage, but I simply haven't had it long enough. I'm still missing too much of the ecosystem, and I'll never get this out in time if I do so, so I'll wrap it up this way for now. Bold and wildly inventive bet that pays off? Or business calculus that flops? I don't know. But again, kudos to Fujifilm for taking the risk. A lot has gone into this camera. I applaud them for it, and I want to spend a lot more time with it. Internals aside, Fujifilm's X-Half is closest in intention, ambition, and execution to Sigma's $2,000 24-megapixel interchangeable lens full-frame BF. Big differences in price, capability, materials, build quality, and industrial design. The X-Half is next closest to, I think, Panasonic's $1,600, also 24-megapixel interchangeable lens LUMIX S9 with 18-40 kit lens. Still big differences in price, capabilities, materials, and industrial design, including an articulating rear screen, although Panasonic has not put in the work to reconceptualize the user experience, most especially when it comes to their menu system. Interestingly enough, I think the X-Half is arguably next closest to Leica's $7,000 Q3 series. Huge differences in price, capabilities, build quality, materials, and execution. Far fewer differences in industrial design. Too much to really contemplate, save for the fact that the X-Half takes all of its design cues from Leica, not Fujifilm. In my book, reasonable people can disagree. It's all good. Sigma, Panasonic, and Leica have all taken time to reconceptualize what a camera can be. Pentax has not, although Leica has the added challenge of stewardship of an icon. This may be why Leica has been exploring smartphones rather than big, bold bets with its cameras. The last one of those was the lovely, delicious APS-C-based TL and CL digital series, but they didn't work out. And indeed, I think, from a competitive perspective, none of these dedicated cameras matter as much as the cameras on board iPhone and Android smartphones. I am not at all sure that people will drop $850 above and beyond the sunk cost of their phones, another $100 or so for an Instax printer, to have less flexibility and a slower, if some might assert, more delightful interface. Then again, people may decide to pay more for a Sony RX100 Mark VII, a bit less for a Canon GX7 Mark III. The X-Half isn't designed to print as large as 17 by 22 on a regular basis. Epson's print utility refused to print a cropped image Claudia snapped of me because it deemed the resolution insufficient at that size and projected viewing distance. Fair enough, although you have to ask yourself, how often do you print that big? For most of us, most of the time, 17 megapixels is more than enough. It is absolutely more than enough for 100% of us if all we do is post to social media. Me personally, the more time I play with it, the more I love some things about it. Form factor, industrial design, size, weight, price, the homage to Leica, the amount of effort that went into it. But I don't imagine you to be surprised to learn that I do experience it more as a surprisingly competent toy camera, a lovely gift perhaps, than an everyday carry. That's a Leica Q343 for me. No matter. We already know I'm too often a statistical outlier. I am not the target buyer in any case. And in the end, the X-Half may surprise all of us anyway. Not just as an antidote to overly expensive, complex, dedicated cameras and the banal, uninspiring appliances which too many smartphones have become, but as a camera people of all ages may enjoy because it is small, light, performant, gets out of the way, fires our imaginations, and tickles our sense and sensibilities. I guess we'll all have to hold that thought. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 10 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comments section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video call via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost-to-you affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.